had me teach leadership, you know that my heart cringes not just for our world today, but particularly for tomorrow. My passion for raising authentic and visionary leaders is undeniable in all that I do. I remember 2 years ago when I first spoke about the concept of my book, The Leadership Guardian, with one of my mentors. She asked, "What do you want people to feel after reading the book?" My answer was very clear. I want the readers to be sober, become more aware of their awesomeness, and be ignited for 360 degrees transformation in every area of their life. The reviews from the independent readers of the Leadership Guardian has been overwhelming. The Leadership Guardian is truly a transformational movement for those who are tired of mediocrity and are ready to lead a 360-degree transformation in their lives. While I cannot wait for this book to grace your shelf, I most importantly cannot wait for the Leadership Guardian to grace your heart. Get your copy today.
Hello, super leaders. Thank you for joining us again on Leadership Chats with Top Business Leaders. My name is Kemi Ogunkoya, a leadership development strategist, management consultant, and author. And I'm glad to bring to you another phenomenal episode. As a leadership development strategist, I equip business leaders to develop the right competence for their leadership role to help them perform effectively in their current roles and seamlessly take on higher positions. Wow, it's so amazing that we are already on the third episode of Leadership Chats with Top Business Leaders. The Leadership Chats with Top Business Leaders is a 12 weeks virtual transformational event which holds every Saturday between 7 p.m. and 7:45 p.m. GMT plus 1, which is West African time, and runs between the 15th of May through the 31st of May. The series will focus around conversations on the dozen model, a leadership framework that I developed, which consists of 12 key elements for effective and visionary leadership. And they include clarity, connection, character, confidence, consequence, community, consideration, critical thinking, community, competence, commitment, and consistency. Every week, I bring to you top leaders over the next 12 weeks, and we will be talking about each of these elements and how you interact with each of them for your personal and professional growth. And today, I have with me the amazing Roxanne Tehrd. She's a psychotherapist, a leadership expert, author, international speaker, and also a member of the Forbes Executive Council. She's a whole lot more. She is, I should mention, a registered psychotherapist, and she specializes in individual, couples, and family therapy and authentic leadership. With over 20 years of experience as a marriage and family therapist, and as a graduate of the University of Toronto and the University of Gallup, specializing in cognitive behavioral and family system therapy. She was an executive with the largest health and wellness firm in North America for 15 years. She was able to utilize her expertise as a psychotherapist to assist companies with their corporate strategies in health and wellness. And in addition to this, in addition to being a prominent psychotherapist and corporate health and wellness executive, she's also a biopic leader. She is an Amazon best-selling author. With the name of the book is A Therapist's Guide. She is a professional member of the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, as well as a contributing member of the Forbes Executive Council. Roxanne speaks internationally to companies on mental health and wellness and what it takes to create the space for positive, healthy changes in their workplace. And today we will be talking about leadership and character. So in a few minutes or in a few seconds, I will be bringing Roxanne up, and I trust that it will be a great and amazing time. So hello, Roxanne. How are you doing?
Good, Kemi. How are you today? How is it in South Africa today?
Um, um, yeah. I'm currently in Lagos, Nigeria now, but it's
Nigeria.
amazing.
Okay, awesome. Well, I can say that this is my first interview in Lagos, so I feel very privileged to be here today.
It's amazing to have you here. So, Roxanne, we just got to meet you. I know there's so much to talk about today. But then, when we talk about the subject of character, especially when it has to do with leadership, a lot of times it seems like the subject of character is being downplayed, especially in a world where we talk about results, we talk about bottom line. What exactly is the place of character in effective leadership?
Well, I think most leaders are gifted with getting things done, and they are highly driven individuals that have a certain capacity to, impact the bottom line. But I think what's coming into question even more so now is the ability to lead, and not just lead based on outcome, but especially in the economic times that we've had. What's really been called on even more so is the leader's ability to connect with the senior teams, but also to their middle management and to the frontline customer, that need to get an understanding of individuals is becoming very important, and we're seeing that much more. I think before it was a nice to have around character, but now a lot of people are standing behind the brands. They're wanting to know, what kind of company are you, and if you're the type of company that you say you are, how is it that you can back that up with the people that work for you, starting from obviously from the top, from your CEOs to your senior leadership suite, all the way down to your frontline managers.
Fantastic. So, which means that beyond what an organization says it stands for, the element of character has to be seen in how they interact, how they operate, and the general, interaction a customer has with the brand, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So why then is it that there seems to be a lot of downplay in that area when it has to do with character?
Well, I think CEOs and senior level leaders, we have a certain expectations of acumen. But what's happening is, and I can think of, leaders that I have dealt with, and, they've openly said to me, Roxanne, what does it have to do? How I come across? And I say, we all want to feel like we matter, regardless of in what particular role we play in a company. And, I think before we used to kind of keep it separate, but now we're wanting to get a sense that, Kemi, I want to know that I can relate to you if you're my senior leader. I want to know not only that you're interested in my bottom line or my results for the quarter, but in fact, you care about me, not to know all the nitty gritty of my ins and outs of my life, but that you really care about some of the things that matter to me. So let's say, like, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago originally, and, if there's something going on potentially in the part of the world that I'm in or that I grew up with, that somehow the leadership has some sense of how I'm being impacted, versus being unaware. This is kind of my team. There's a bit of a blueprint. This is the business unit. These are the expectations. You're off track, or you're propelling well past the expectations. Now people are wanting to know, do you care? And if you do care, how is it that I know you care? Because if I think you care for me as an individual, I'm going to work that much harder, because I'm going to be happier at work. If I'm happier and I can bring my authentic self, which is what I talk a lot about, to work, that means that everything about me comes to work with me, and I'm secure and safe psychologically at work. And if I'm safe and secure psychologically, I'm going to put my best foot forward ultimately. My creativity is going to be higher. And if I'm more creative, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be coming up with solutions that I would have potentially left at home before because I couldn't bring the fullest version of myself to work.
Wow. Thank you very much for sharing that. Now, what's interesting in how you have been able to share the sequence of how character and then the bottom line, relate is quite interesting. So for a lot of leaders, you hear things like, "Oh yeah, so why do I have to be of my best self? How does it really affect the bottom line?" I love that you have been able to tie that to creativity, because if we're able to ensure that a critical mass of the organization are happy, then they can tap into their creativity, with also invariably impacts business results. Now, when it comes to character, as individuals, we're all different. We also look at the place of nature, we look at the role of nurture, and how some of these elements have, had significant impact on how we relate with people, how we're able to empathize, and quite a couple of other, characteristics that we would expect from a great leader. Now, how do we define what true character is in the workplace? And how do people get to that point where they can critically assess, access or critically assess their character to ensure that they're in alignment with corporate values and corporate objectives?
Well, I think the first thing is awareness. So I say you should take the pulse of your organization, not by when you're doing well, but you want to hear the negative feedback as much as the positive. And I think a lot of leaders, they feel they kind of sit with, I'm hearing all this positive feedback, our market share is going up, things are going well for us. But I often say to them that what they should in fact do is talk about the negative implications of some of their decisions or the things that people didn't feel very good about. So what you're wanting to do is to create an openness within your environment to be able to get feedback that tells you with things that people haven't been happy with. And that's oftentimes gets what I would say a little bit prickly, right? We all want to hear what we're doing well, but as human beings, it's kind of uncomfortable sometimes to hear what we're not doing well. So when you're creating a space of psychological safety, what you're doing is you're saying, look, I'm a human being. I have certain assets within myself, but I also have certain deficits. And what I realize is, I want to talk a little bit about that last email I sent out concerning XYZ. And I want to know, how is that for you? And opening up to an open forum where people can openly share, in fact, Roxanne, I really didn't like the way, it seemed like an abrupt communication. There was no context. There was no build-up. There was no understanding about why this was happening other than this is what happened and this was the bottom line. And I think once you kind of start to create that space of openness, what people start to go, wow, you can actually, stand up and, in a training term, take the licks, like we say, in a way, in that I can openly hear what's not working well in reference to my actions for the people around me. So not to shut down people when things aren't going well, to hear the good with the bad. And then people say, wow, he or she actually listens to me. And to maybe also take that feedback and make sure you create outcomes based on the feedback. I think that's the most important thing. So if you hear that your communication was not as transparent as possible, or maybe that someone enjoyed the transparency that you shared during maybe that quarterly meeting, go back and try to kind of think in your awareness as a leader, what can I learn from that? What can I learn? And think, okay, well, they're asking for a bit more communication. Even if I don't have more information, go back and ensure that you implement that in the next, say, quarterly meeting or your next, kind of outlay of things that may be going out to the front line. And because I think a lot of times leaders get feedback and they listen, but do they implement things that where there's a desired different outcome. Ensure that you connect. If it's positive, fantastic, but negative or ambivalent feedback to an outcome. This is what I heard. This is what I did. This is what I realized didn't go so well. And this is some feedback that I'm so grateful I've had. And this is this is what I've learned about myself. And thank you so much for giving me that information so that now I can go back and implement this within myself. And going forward, I can keep that in mind so that I can be the best version of the leader that you need me to be, because I'm not perfect and sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. And that's hard for leaders to do oftentimes, Kemi, to say, well, I really don't know, because I'm supposed to have the answers, right? As the CEO or as the senior leader. But sometimes if you say, that's an interesting perspective, I need to think about that. But I love the perspective you're sharing with me. It shows a vulnerability that shows that people can say, wow, I'm important. What I have to say will be taken in mind.
Well, so that's really interesting. So the dozen model, which this series is around, has 12 elements, and one of those elements is communication. So you're talking about character, and then we're talking about communication. We also cannot talk about character and not talk about clarity, right? Which is another key element on the dozen model. There's also the element of consequence, right? Because we cannot talk about character and not talk about consequences for actions and also our inactions. We cannot talk about character and not talk about consideration, which is also another element of the dozen model. So, which means that in itself, character cannot stand on its own, right? So it's not enough that as a leader you have great character or you're developing your character. You also have to be able to communicate it, which I hear clearly in what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is a place of vulnerability on this journey? Because you have mentioned the fact that as leaders, you have mentioned the fact that a lot of leaders find it difficult to be vulnerable. Now, I'll give an example quickly about something that I experienced yesterday. So while we were setting up for this event, I sent a couple of mails out, and then I said, "Oh, what would you be doing on Saturday? Would you Netflix and chill?" And then I put it out there. It was innocent, and then someone sent a message and said, "Oh, I'm not sure you quite understand the meaning of what you put out there." And I checked it up online and I saw it had a totally different meaning, and then I had to go back on the post to say, oh, you know what, thank you very much for the information. We learn every day. Thank you for educating me, and thank you. But then I learned that and of a truth, I didn't feel embarrassed learning or coming out to say thank you. I didn't know that before. But then there was a time that I would have felt embarrassed by that. And I'm just thinking, oh, why did that happen? Why did I, and all of that. So I understand that process, and it's a journey that we are on, right? Now, how are leaders able to marry character and vulnerability? How are they able to appreciate that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness?
Well, I think stories are the best approach I can think, Kemi, and when things are tough, like we've all been through tough times. If you've been in kind of any executive role, you've had to make some tough decisions. And I don't know about you, but I know I've made my fair amount of decisions that really didn't go over very well. And I think as a leader, think about it. So let's say you're having maybe there's a business metric that is completely off, right? And you thought it would kind of be doing very well, and you have to go back to your team, and maybe the team is let down, maybe and people are having certain expectations of the business growing. What I think you need to go back as the leader and think about is when was there a time that you expected something to go a certain way and it didn't go that way for you, and how did that affect you? Because I think when you share that with individuals, what they start to realize that is, that you're human and you're vulnerable, and sometimes things don't go so well for you as well. and telling them or sharing with them how you coped. And when you do that, what it helps people realize is the transparency that you are sharing with them about, when things don't go well for you, and that you've made decisions that are less ideal than normal, and what you learn from it. And storytelling is a very, very powerful way of doing that. And I can think about so many times I made decisions where I took on a consulting situation. I thought there was going to be the best thing, and then I got into the consulting situation, and soon I've signed a contract, and soon into it, the variables that I was looking for enhancement was just not there, and I felt like I had failed. And when I felt like I failed, I wanted to kind of put my head in the sand, but then I started to look back and say, what could I learn from this? What could I learn about me? What's important to me? What do I value? What is my vision on those things? And the more I shared that with the individuals that I was in the consulting situation with, they understood. So for leaders, I say, think about it. Like in my new book that's coming out, Kemi, I talk a lot about is go back to your original leadership story. So I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, and in my, the Caribbean culture is, it's African, but it's also Indian and Middle Eastern. So I grew up in a very small village where my grandparents, were kind of the ones that kind of imparted messages to me, and it was about being real and about being authentic. So I often say for leaders, go back to some of your core fundamental things. Why do you lead the way? Why did you want to become a leader? And, are you acting in alignment with those values? And if you're out of alignment, what things might be presenting in the present to what blind spots might be kind of hitting you? And this is where awareness comes in, just for you to start spending time and thinking, what can I do to enhance this, to learn a different skill, to accept that I maybe don't have the skill, or that maybe I need to defer to someone else to deal with this issue. And it's a combination of things. So what's your leadership story? And where are you at? And what do you need to do to enhance this? And leadership awareness and space and understanding your stressors and all those things become important. So more internal awareness as a leader allows you to become more connected, because then you understand yourself, and your frontward facing space allows you to understand other people's space.
Great. Awareness is absolutely key. Awareness is absolutely key for leaders. So that takes me to another question, really, because we have leaders who have been able to get results through different means, probably introducing the carrot and the stick, or then command and control. And for them, it works, right? It works. So why do they have to change? Why do they have to modify behavior? Why do they have to work around their character when everything around them seems to be working?
Well, I think you have to look at it and say, is this a short-term strategy? In the economy that we're in now, Kemi, the concept of VUCA, is even times 10 now. Companies have to work even harder to keep their talent, right? And now a lot more people are going to use their feet, because they're going to want to live in alignment based on what, I don't know, but I would say that a lot of people are rethinking what they value, what do they want in their life. Most of us spend a lot of our lives at work, and we want to enjoy or have that alignment with our work. And if I'm in a stressful situation, and potentially I'm having issues with work-life balance, or my hours end up being kind of out of alignment with what I want in my life overall, I might start to look at other companies that might create the space for me to be in alignment with my overall life, versus staying in an environment where I'm thinking, I don't know how much more I can do this. If there are options out there for me, then I might start looking around to see what other options better fit my life. So I think from a talent perspective, that's what the leaders need to, or companies need to start thinking about. With today's economy, people are wanting to enjoy their lives, and have meaning and purpose at work, but they also want to bring value to their jobs or their positions. And in today's and in age, especially with the younger population, they're coming from a space of value first. How am I living within my values, and not waiting, maybe like the older generation, to wait till they can get to a certain position to live that value. So if you're wanting to keep individuals and your human capital in this digital economy, you really have to think about how am I creating the space for meaning and purpose and alignment for the people, especially for the people that have top talents, who could be kind of swept away by your competitors. I think that becomes very, very important.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you that we have to rethink a lot as leaders. We have to rethink our position on, what's working and what's not working. We have to review our position based on the reality of the new world, based on the VUCA world. The VUCA world is going nowhere, and we have to adapt to understand that the changes or the demand of the workforce is also changing, and therefore we have to also, as leaders, get used to the new requirements of leadership. And character is the bedrock of it. Now, Roxanne, I know that you work with a lot of leaders, especially in the area of leadership authenticity. Now, what exactly does it take for a leader to be authentic, right? And then how is that leader also able to remain consistent in the expression of this authentic self?
Well, for leaders to be authentic, they have to really be connected to their core internal space. Am I acting in accordance with what I value? So I'm not being incongruent. I'm not being one person on the inside or one person at home and one person at work. There is complete transparency about who I am as a person. I'm coming from my heart. I'm listening. I'm discerning what's important. And how does that translate out into my behaviors at work? And most authentic leaders are people that are very, very, I would say they're humble in that they recognize that they're consistently learning. They're not coming from a space of all knowing, but they're more on the space of servant leadership. I am here not to be the autocratic leader that has the answers, but in fact that I want to lead with you shoulder to shoulder. So help me understand so I can be the best version of the leader that's needed for the company that I'm leading. And when you de-stratify things at that level, the authenticity shows through, and then people really think, I really like this leader. And I can think of myself in a lot of the different positions that I've been in, Kemi, and I can think of some of the really inauthentic leaders that I have served under, and I know most people have served under them. And did I produce? Absolutely. Did they get complete capacity from me? Because I didn't have the level of productivity versus when I was led by a leader that I truly believe, wow, he or she is so authentic. They care not just about the bottom line, they care about the people. They understand what's going on. They understand the pulse of their teams. They understand when we're under pressure. They tell us when they're under pressure. Not kind of, spilling it all out and saying I'm not functioning, but there's relatability. And then in those environments, I would say those people got me working harder because I thought, wow, he or she is just like me. They have families, they have spouses that are calling to say, you're on your way home, right? Or children that need to go to hockey and golf and all those things. So I think when you get leaders like that, that shares that space, then we want to excel to please them. And when you have everyone around you really having that level of respect that we are shoulder to shoulder in this, I think the bottom line takes care of itself. And my new book is about, not thinking of ROI, but thinking of ROR, which is your return on relationship. And that's where I think the authentic leader looks at that metric first. How am I doing in reference to relatability, connection, recognition, connection, and understanding, the SWOT analysis of my sector? And how am I creating the space to say, I'm having a tough time too. I'm going to let you know that I'm going to communicate. I'm going to share some things about myself that maybe you think, oh, I don't know. It's not going to be too much, but it's enough, versus me looking like I'm flawless through COVID when we've just had to shut down 3, sections of our business, to talk to that about really what that's like. And in a town hall, in your meetings where you talk to people about what they're doing just before they got on Zoom and what they're going to be doing after, to really kind of tell them, so they get a window into your world as well as you get a window into theirs, now that we're in this different environment.
Wow. So I love return on relationship. That's a totally different perspective to it, right? And I think that will significantly bring out the humanity in us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because yes, we should focus on the why, but I think that leads us to a place of selfishness sometimes, where it's about what can we get out of people, what can we get them to do, and not really coming from that place where we can build relationship, where we can consolidate relationships. So I'd like you to share with us a little more about that. What exactly is return on relationships? And what is the starting point for leaders to turn away from selfishness, to focusing on developing relationships that are sustainable and relationships that are mutually beneficial?
Well, I think it has to start with the leader, where he or she has to say, if I were not in the room, or if I were to walk into the room, how does the conversation change or shift? Right? When I'm at the water cooler, which we're not at the water cooler as much now because, being at home, if I could kind of hear those conversations, what kind of things would be said about me? And I think that's a starting point. And a lot of leaders say, well, I hear the feedback from the 360s and all those things, but I mean, really getting to the point where you are going to get some of the truths. And unfortunately, what happens with some senior leaders or CEOs is they become so sealed off and so high functioning, where people are actually, thinking that they're functioning well, and maybe they're having as much stress as other people, but they're able to seal it off more. And everybody tells them what they want to hear. And I think that's a beginning point where senior leaders really have to say, I get the feeling that, everybody wants things to be kind of rosy for me, but I want you to know that I've looked into, the trend analysis of, mental health claims. I've looked at our short-term and long-term incidental absences. I've looked at, our conflicts potentially in the workplace. And I realize there's some things that I don't know. And I'd like to know more, because I think that there is a gap between me and you. And I want to close that gap as much as possible so that I can lead effectively based on what's really happening in my environment. And there's lots of different ways that you could go about doing that. And starting with maybe some people that you could trust within your environment that's going to be able to tell you the truth. And to start to, whether it starts to be in town halls eventually, or anonymous feedback, or your social media feedback from customers, really getting the real information about your leadership is key. And then that will give you a metric of where you need to begin. And based on that, then you can say, okay, what am I doing well, and what is my team doing well, and what is it that we're not doing so well in? And then at that beginning point, there becomes a plan, which is what I talk about. You know, how am I in an area of connection? Am I aware that, you know, maybe if I'm a multinational and, you know, we know what's happening in India, Kemi, and am I not being aware about those teams internationally in India, and we're still having the same outcome expectations where people are losing family members and those types of things? If it's awareness, it's recognition, you know, all those things, then start to get that metric about really what's the truth, and then start to think about what areas can I start to improve on in small incremental steps. And, you know, a lot of leaders will say, well, nobody will tell me. And I go, okay, well, then go home. I don't know how many children you have. And you're going to start with people that are closest to you or closest colleagues and say, can you tell me what Roxanne's really like when, as your friend or as your colleague, how is it that I act when I'm stressed? How do I communicate when I'm stressed? Do I ask for help or do I not ask for help? And start with the people that are your allies that can really give you a transparent look into what you're like as a leader. At home, you're a leader too. Maybe you're not in charge at home, but those individuals at home see you for who you are. And start to get a snapshot about how you relate, how you connect. Are you aware of what's going on with your different people in your lives? And start to build that internal knowledge about yourself, because we need to understand our stress signatures as leaders. We need to understand when we are reactive. We need to understand when somebody needs recognition in a way that we go, oh, well, why do they need it that way? I'm not like that. Really start to get a real frame, almost like a diagnostic of your leadership, and say, okay, what small steps can I start to take, even in one of those areas, to get closer to enhancing my leadership, you know, going forward. You know, you can't bite it all off, but start with small steps.
Interesting. I love something you said about, you know, checking in at home, because I feel that there are quite a number of leaders who are able to show up at work and then, you know, they pretty much have a totally different expression of their character in other settings. And for me, I usually say that when there's a great disparity between who you are at home and who you are at work, it means there's something fundamentally wrong somewhere, because in as much as you can have varied expression because the situations and the circumstances are different, but if the core of your character is entrenched in values, then there will be some level of consistency. Expression may be different. Now, based on what you have said, how do we ensure that, or how do leaders get to that point of comfort where they can be themselves at home, they can be themselves at work? Because I feel a lot of people, you know, in leadership positions are caught up in an act, you know, and when leadership is an act, it becomes so overwhelming. Like, you know, you constantly have to show up in a particular way because you feel that's what is acceptable. But then when it becomes a lifestyle, when you adopt leadership as a lifestyle, and then, you know, it's embedded in your character, then you don't have to act anymore. It just becomes a part of you. So how are leaders able to ensure that there's this level of consistency? You know, you have spoken a lot about awareness, you have spoken a lot about feedback. But then if someone is thinking, okay, I've started that journey, what else do I need to do? What can they do to ensure there's that level of consistency in the expression of their leadership?
Well, I think once you do a kind of an analysis of and getting feedback, I would say equally negative and positive, focus on the negative ones and try to think about what are you going to implement. And you're going to constantly check in with the teams that you're running, right? To say, how are we doing? You know, last quarter, we talked a little bit more about that we're going to have more check-ins, or, you know, we're going to do something a bit more casual. I have some CEOs that, you know, when the pandemic hit, what they did is they had like a smaller company, but they picked up the phone and spoke to 200 employees. And you know what happened initially? Everybody said, oh boy, the CEO is calling me. It must mean that I'm about to be terminated. He said he was shocked, right? And then he said, no, I'm just calling to say hello and to say, this is pretty cruddy what we're going through. I want to let you know that everybody's reeling and so am I. And that I wanted to let you know that we are going to do whatever is necessary to accommodate, even if we have to alter the amount of days that people work to keep everybody working. He said he was shocked how many people were scared when he was actually on the phone with them. And just took him talking to them to say, I'm so sorry that you're having this reaction to me, but I recognize that this is something that's important that I need to continue doing going forward post-pandemic. So I think learning those things that really work in this time through this adversity, Kemi, I think we have to learn so much more about ourselves as leaders. And the leaders, the authentic leaders, are the people that were already, being aware and understanding how they deal with stress and reactivity and fear and all those things are the ones that did well. So I think just taking that time to really get a pulse of what's happening for you, what's happening out there, what are the realities of what's happening within your company, but also what's happening out there in the world. And even if you're not feeling that people are reacting in a certain way, you throw it out there to have open discussion with people to say, how are you really feeling about going back to work? What are your concerns? We have put some certain things in place. Is it enough? I'm not sure that it's enough, but help me understand if what we were planning, have I kind of crossed the T's and dotted the I's? Or are there things from you as the frontline person on the loading dock, or you are the person that's the courier, or you are the person that's cleaning the building, or you are the person that's middle manager who deals with the frontline customer and customer service? From every position in every business unit, and you do that to say, help me understand, have I missed something? That credibility that you're going to gain from having those conversations, and the reachability of you is going to create that space that will show people that you're really working. And we all have blind sides, right? And if you have a certain blind side and they recognize that you're working on it, they're going to say, wow, he or she's really working on getting more connected to us, and we're all in this together. And I think when you get companies that are thinking there's the great divide, there's senior management and there's the rest of us, you hear people saying it's, I'm going to do my job and go home. That's all I've been employed for, versus we're all in this together.
Interesting perspective. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Roxanne. It's been great conversations. It's been mind-troubling, but definitely I'm sure the leaders who are on the call today and those who will listen to this after now will go home with something to reflect on, to modify behavior, to review and reflect on your culture within your organization, and then do the needful. Because truly, when there's a healthy culture within your organization based on the character of its leaders, your organization, your business will achieve greater results. No doubt. So thank you very much, Roxanne, for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing great insight with us. We sincerely appreciate it. Would like to know where we can find you, and also when your book is out, where can we purchase your book?
So you can reach me at roxannederhodge.com, just like my name is spelled. And I have a first book on relationships now. So if you wanted to get a digital download of that, you could just go to roxannederhodge.com/Forbes, and you'll be able to download. And how could I enhance relationships? This is across the board. My new book will be coming out in 2 months. And if you get connected to me, we'll let you know about the release. Where you'll be able to learn more about authentic leadership within yourself, where you can assess yourself, but your teams will also be assessing you. And then there's a plan that gets created of course, you have to be organizationally ready. So we would see if there's readiness to be able to work with yourself and your teams, or just even, to do some coaching with your leaders.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Roxanne. So, guys, make sure you find Roxanne on her website and also on social media if that is more convenient for you. And be on the lookout for her book when it's out. So, it's been great, exciting, and transformational conversations today on character. And as leaders, we nudge you to just keep going, right? Reflect, review, invest on the journey of self-awareness and just become better, because when you get better, your organization also gets better. Note that insights without actions will always be useless. So you want to run with this new insight so that you can achieve better effectiveness as a leader. So on this note, we come to the end of the show today. Thank you so much, Roxanne. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much for
And
having me, Kemi.
all right. All right. And guys, that is the end of the show today. So make sure you look out for the next episode. Insights without actions is always going to be useless. So make sure you turn all those insights into actions. Till we see you again next week, I have another amazing guest. I'll see you then. All right. Bye.